Okay, now we're being recorded. So let's dive into the finance sales contract. Does anybody have any specific contract questions that they would like for me to hit while we're going over this before we get started? Everybody good? Okay. All right, so we're going to go in finance sales contract. Make sure it is the finance sales contract that says 08-2020. That is the latest version of the finance sales contract that is on .loop. So I believe they took the other one off, but if you still see the other one, this is the updated one. So we're going to click on it. We're just going to go, hopefully. All right, perfect. All right, so we're going to start with the finance sales contract. The first line is the purchaser. That is pretty simple. You just take whomever is on their pre-approval letter and write their name down. I get a lot of questions about if it's just the husband or the wife on the pre-approval letter, do you put the other party on the contract? The answer is it's up to them. So sometimes they would rather just have the party that is on the pre-approval letter on the contract and then the other person on the deed at closing. And then sometimes they would rather have both of them on there. So you just need to double check with them, make sure, especially if you have, a husband, wife, and I have one right now where the husband is here, but the wife is not, and she is not going to be at closing or anything. So she decided it would be best if she wasn't on the contract and she was just on the paperwork for closing. That way she could do a mail away. So completely up to you as to which way you do that. So for today, I just put Betty Buyer right here. So you just literally type in the name. Make sure it is their legal name and not, if you have a Bob and his legal name is Robert, make sure Robert is on the contract. The seller goes in the second line. And the way you get the seller's information is if you look on MLS or if you look in tax records. I always like to verify through tax records. Sometimes the MLS, the agent will only put the first name in there and it's really hard to find the last name. So I usually go on the tax record for that county, whether it be Madison, Morgan, Limestone, whichever county it is, and just double check the seller's name. If it is a trust, you see trust in there. Make sure that you are asking the question if all the parties involved are on the same page to the listing agent. Sometimes in a trust, you could end up having 4 or 5 different sellers, and it could take up to 4 or 5 days to get an answer on an offer that you submit, just because all the parties are not on the same page. So if you see a living trust, that's a little bit different. But if you see something in a trust name, make sure that you've talked to the listing agent about timeline-wise. If you're going to put a timeline on your offer, some agents put a timeline. If you're going to put a timeline on your offer, a trust is usually not the best one to put a timeline on because it's usually involving more than just one person. Oh, still admitting. All right. We're going to use the address that's found in the MLS. So for this instance, I just used 133 Freedom Way. Now, we are either going to have a lot and block in a subdivision, or we are going to have meets and bounds. Meets and bounds means that there is not a lot and block. Instead of subdivision, you would simply put meets and bounds right here. Okay, that means that it's not in a subdivision. Usually the legal description on a meets and bounds has all the property line on it. So it says 50 foot to the northwest of whatever corner, and then 85 foot to the east, that kind of thing. So you're either going to have a lot and block subdivision, or you're going to have meets and bounds. And sometimes you'll have a lot and you won't have a block. So you can put like lot 25 block NA. Not BNA, come on. BN. Not NAQ either. Okay, there you go. Or it might say lot 25 block 3, and you could put block 3 there. Now it's going to go slow. Come on. Come on. It just froze on me. That's cool. Anyway, moving on. Purchase price. Now it's going to go way too far. Purchase price.
I'm sorry, what is addition?
Addition, it just means if there's an additional like phase or something that's in there. So sometimes you'll see a subdivision that has had in addition to it. So you'll see like Liberty Knoll phase 2 addition to Lexington something something something. So it would say on the tax records addition, and it would have another subdivision. The only time we normally see it is if 2 subdivisions have merged together and you get really one of those funky houses that is actually in both subdivisions. It would say addition on the tax records. It's very, very rare that you would see that though. So it's not that it's not out there, it's just very rare that you're going to see it. But it is there. So that's a great question. Purchase price. So this is going to be what your buyer is offering. So whatever price that is, that's what you put in right there. That's the purchase price. Earnest money held by selling company or Keller Williams Realty. Do not put your name there. They do not write earnest money to you.
I'm sorry. For the purchase price, is that minus the 20% down or anything down?
That is just so on this sheet, you don't do any calculations. You just put the matter of fact numbers right there. Okay, so that is just going to be the purchase price. You're not talking about any loan amount, down payment, anything. It's just the purchase price right there. Okay.
Thank you.
The second one is the earnest money. Now, earnest money, can anybody tell me what standard earnest money is?
1,000 or 10 or 1%.
Correct. So standard is somewhere around $1,000. Now, if you have a small house that's only, $150,000, then you could do a $500 earnest money. But standard is going to be roughly around $1,000 until you get into the higher price ranges. And we are seeing a good bit of agents put in the MLS that 1% earnest money is required. So that could be, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, depending on how much the house is. So just keep an eye on that. I always like to prepare my buyers and tell them in this market, you're going to have so many multiple offers that the more earnest money you put down, the better it does look on paper. However, because they're putting more earnest money, $1,000 versus $4,000, does not mean that they're gonna get the house over just earnest money, okay? There's a lot of different factors. They might look at that as a seller. When they're presenting, the seller might say, hey, these people are pretty serious if they're putting this much earnest money down. However, your buyer needs to realize that's just more money on the line that they could possibly lose. Does everybody understand? Earnest money is refundable until there's a dispute. And if there's a dispute, I've seen it go both ways. I just had a buyer lose $4,000, actually she lost $5,000 in earnest money to get out of a contract about a month ago. So they need to realize, she said to me, she said, well, I thought that earnest money, I could just put the earnest money up and then I could get it back if I walked away. That is not true. Not true at all, okay? This is a legal binding contract. So we need to make sure that they understand that once they sign this contract, it is legal binding and the seller can hold them to the contract. Okay? So earnest money goes in the second slot. Again, we're not subtracting anything in this one. We are just putting the matter of fact numbers right here. The contract is contingent upon purchaser obtaining approval of blank loan. In this case, I put conventional, but you could have FHA, you can have VA, you can have USDA, you can have a lot of different loan types. And that's something that you want to talk to the lender about, get in good with a lender here. They can give you all of their different types of loans that they're offering within their bank or credit union or wherever you go. Okay, this is always backwards to me, so this is why I wrote it out for you guys.
On the loan type, if it's cash, do you put cash there or leave it blank?
So if it's cash, then you're going to be doing a cash sales contract and not a finance sales contract. So that way you don't have to write it. So cash is going to be at the top where it says finance, it's just going to say cash sales contract. So it's basically the same thing, but it's a little bit different since it's cash. Okay. So if you're doing a cash sale, you'll want to definitely look for the cash sales contract to do that. Okay. This contract is contingent upon purchaser obtaining approval of blank loan in the amount of. The third line down is the loan amount. I always thought this was backwards because it feels like you should have the down payment before you have the loan amount, but that's not the way this is written. The third line down is just the loan amount. So whatever the loan amount is, that's what you put. So if they're putting 10% down, you take that loan amount, put it there. If they're putting 3% down, same thing, you just put it there. You don't subtract earnest money from the loan amount, okay? Do not subtract earnest money. The fourth line down is the down payment. That is just the down payment. You're also not subtracting earnest money from the down payment. You are just simply putting the down payment is $8,000, $10,000, whatever it may be. Zero, if they're doing a VA loan, it very well could be zero down payment. And the loan amount could be $240. Okay, so we do not do any subtraction on these lines. So our first line is purchase price. Second is earnest money. Third is loan amount. And then fourth is down payment. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. They can wire earnest money to our office. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get earnest money. We prefer you to have earnest money before you write an offer. Some buyers are not comfortable with that. They would rather know that their offer is being accepted first. And I'll tell you what you can put in the contract in lieu of that, okay? But it must either be a personal check or a certified check, money order is fine, or they can wire funds. If they are wiring funds, you must add an additional, I think I need to check with Jill on this. I think it's $15, $10 or $15, that our bank is going to charge us for the wire fee. So they would need to add that $10 or $15 to the wire. And we do have wire fund or wire instructions that Sarah can email out. They were on our .loop portal at one time, so they might still be there. I'll have to double check. But they can wire. So if you have somebody that would rather wire funds instead of actually writing a check or getting certified funds, then they can do that, okay? The down payment, however, they need to understand the down payment is paid at closing. The earnest money is paid upfront. So that is something that we pay once we go under contract, that earnest money is paid. So if they're gonna put $4,000 there, they need to be prepared that if they win the contract, they win it over all the multiples that are gonna be in there, then they are gonna have to put up $4,000 tomorrow. So if they tell you, oh, well, I was thinking that was not gonna be until the end, I don't have $4,000, you see that can be a problem, right? We need to make sure that they're aware earnest money is paid upfront in good faith that you want the house. Down payment is paid at closing. Now, down payment cannot be cash and it cannot be a personal check. They will either have to wire the funds to the attorney's office or they will have to bring a certified check. Okay, everybody gets a little confused on that, especially if you're working with an older purchaser that has purchased multiple homes throughout their lifetime. They don't see a problem with bringing cash to the attorney's office, and they don't see a problem with just writing a personal check because they know it's good. And that's just not how we can do it here. We have to have wired funds or certified funds at closing. Any questions about that? Good. All right, purchaser agrees to apply for said loan within blank working days and to make a diligent and good faith effort to obtain approval. Now, you need to put 3 to 5 in here. You can put 5, you can put 3, whichever you want to put. They should already have a pre-approval letter when you write this offer, okay? Not a pre-qualification where they just have pulled their credit. They need a true pre-approval letter where the lender has looked at their bank stubs. They've looked at their pay stubs, their bank statements, W-2s. I mean, they've looked at their stuff that they need, okay? That is a true pre-approval. A pre-qualification is they go through there and they just tell the lender, I roughly make this amount of money and this is they pull their credit and they look at that and they say, I can send you everything later. That's a pre-qualification. That is not going to be as strong as a pre-approval letter, okay? When you get a pre-qualification on someone, you end up down the road, people that don't have very much money for down payment assistance, FHA loans especially, a lot of times when you have to do an FHA loan, it's either because their credit score is not good enough to do a conventional or their debt to income is too high. Now, debt to income can be a huge factor when the numbers are off by just a little bit. If they miss their salary by $1,500 per year, it's enough to throw an FHA loan, debt to income too high in order to close it. So that's why it's really important to go ahead and get those pre-approval letters so you know that your buyer truly is qualified and can move forward in purchasing. Everybody understand? Okay. There's also, if you look right here for FHA loans, and this is for VA too, there's an FHA VA disclosure addendum that you must fill out if you are doing an FHA loan. It just basically means that the home by FHA or VA must appraise for purchase price or greater. Now, on VA, the veteran does have the choice to waive that appraisal contingency and bring the extra cash for the difference. FHA, it has to appraise for purchase price or greater. There's just no way around it. Okay, settlement charges. Trying to make y'all smaller. Settlement charges, purchasers' loan closing costs, prepaid items, escrows, loan discount fees and funding fees, PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, MIP, and funding fees are to be paid by purchaser. Funding fee to be financed. The only time you will have a funding fee is if it is a government-backed loan. So if you have a FHA, a VA, or a USDA, those are all government-backed loans, and you would put in the type of loan. You would just put FHA and yes, because the funding fee would be financed if they're doing government. In this case, this is conventional. I cannot even type. This is conventional, and you're going to put no because there is no funding fee on a conventional loan. Seller agrees to contribute up to blank towards purchaser's total settlement charges, to include half title cost, purchaser, and the cost that purchaser is not allowed to pay under FHA VA conventional requirements, but exclusive of direct seller cost. Okay. So notice these are the purchaser's loan closing costs, not the seller's. The seller has their own closing costs between paying commission, their half title, deed prep, taxes, that kind of thing. This is just the purchaser side. So this is what the costs are going to be for the purchaser to get a loan. They're roughly about 3% of the purchase price, roughly. So in this market right now, that number should be as close to zero as possible if your buyer really wants a chance to get a house. However, we know a lot of people don't have the luxury of doing a down payment of 5% or 3.5% plus paying another $8,000 in closing costs out of their own pocket. So this is where you have to get with your lender. You have to talk about strategy. The lenders know right now how competitive it is. They know to prep the purchaser on paying their own closing cost. And, you know, they might need to do a 3.5% down payment for FHA to be able to have those closing cost funds. So that could be the difference in an FHA and a conventional. So talk to the lender. They're doing a really good job right now about prepping the buyers to pay their own closing costs. But when you have your buyer consultation, you should also be prepping your purchaser as well that sellers are really not paying closing costs in today's market. They're just not doing it, especially on a hot property that that has multiple offers on it. You're not going to get very far if you put much closing costs to be paid on there. And it could be as little as, I had one that was in multiples that we ended up, it was this house, we ended up not taking it, and it was only $1,500 in closing cost. But it was $1,500 that a couple of the other offers did not have on it. So it could literally come down to that small amount of money. Okay, so just prep your buyers in this market that it's a seller's market, not a buyer's market. We will go back to a buyer's market one day. We don't know when. We cannot see that happening for the foreseeable future. But one day we will go back to a buyer's market, and all of you that got into real estate in a seller's market, your heads are going to be blown because you'll be putting like $8,000 to $10,000 in there, and you'll be dropping the price by like $5,000 to $20,000. I mean, it's just crazy. So, not like it is right now where you're having to go over list price to beat out multiple offers. It's the complete opposite. So this is where we are right now. Just prep your buyers. I usually try to prep all the first time home buyers that we work with to be prepared to pay their down payment plus their own closing costs. There are some exceptions. Some builders are still paying some closing costs with their preferred lenders, but double check. Okay, I just had one go get pricing, and the lender told them they would pay, I think it was up to, it's like 1.25% or something like that. But when we got their lender's fees, they ended up being so much more than the people through the lender that they were already approved with, that it did not make sense to actually switch and get the closing costs paid, because they ended up with basically the same amount of cash to bring the closing. So just double check that. Any questions about closing cost or who pays what? We're good? Okay. We're gonna skip down a few. Survey. One thing I will hit on a survey real quick. A survey is not required unless it is a like lot or land. If it's land, then I would highly suggest asking for a current survey. You never know if a neighbor could put a fence on the property or something like that. So you want to keep a current survey if it's land. If it is a lot and block subdivision, the lenders typically do not ask for a new survey because the lines are already drawn out for you on the tax records. However, you will have some purchasers that really feel like one should be done. So just be aware of that. But it's not typical of homes that are in a subdivision. Okay, let's hop down to closing. Closing is normally 30 days, okay? Sometimes the lenders can get it done quicker because our appraisers have been so backed up with refinances lately. I would say you're safe just doing 30 days. If it's a VA or possibly an FHA, but you're not going to have as many issues with FHA. But if it's a VA or a USDA, I would prepare your purchaser for 45 to 60 days. For USDA is about 60 days. But VA, you're looking at probably a 45-day close. Now, that does not mean that you can't get it done in 30 days. There are lenders that can get VA done in 30 days. However, it just might take a little bit longer than that depending on the lender. I have one right now, it's the 16th. I have one right now that's a VA that was a 40-day close and was scheduled to close the 4th of November. It is the 16th. It has not closed yet. So it's Navy Federal, and I would not suggest going through Navy Federal. That's why we like our local lenders. But the veteran obviously wanted to go through them. Well, they're so backed up with refinances, and we were basically in a pile of purchases that they didn't even start working on the loan until the 9th of November. So that's 5 days after our closing date had passed. So just if you have a VA buyer, realistically, try to get them in with someone local that's gonna be able to push their loan through. If they are dead set on going with USAA or Navy Federal or one of the bigger institutions like that, just know that delays could be coming your way. So they very well could be coming your way. Right now, I mean, we're at the 16th. You could put, December 18th for closing. That would be fine. Also, here in Alabama, possession is given at closing. So in other states, you will have possession given to the purchaser 5-7 days after closing. Here in Alabama, possession is given at closing unless you have an occupancy agreement or a retention of possession. We can go over both of those in contracts too. However, we do not want you to be encouraged to use those, especially not occupancy agreement. I can give you a lot of nightmare stories about occupancy agreement and what could go wrong. Retention of possession is not ideal either. Sometimes you do have to use retention of possession, but it's just not ideal. So we always want to put in here possession given at closing. Everybody good on that? Okay. All right. Number 3 is agency disclosure. This is basically a RECAD form that is within the contract. So we're going to put the listing company down, whether it be Keller Williams, Remax, Coldwell Banker, Revolve, whoever it is. The selling company is going to be Keller Williams Realty Madison. And if Keller Williams is on both sides, it could be Keller Williams Huntsville and Keller Williams Madison. You're acting as a limited consensual dual agent. Okay. If it's Remax over here, then they're an agent of the seller. Keller Williams is an agent of the purchasing. Okay. If it is one of the flat fee brokerage people that have listed it, basically FSBO, then they're assisting the seller as a transaction broker. Okay, you don't see, well, you do see a good bit of those. So you do need to know that. So that is basically a RECAD form just within the contract. Okay, paragraph 4. Paragraph 4 is a big paragraph. I would print this contract out, and there's 2 paragraphs that I would highlight and know like the back of my hand. One is paragraph 4A, and one is 9, which we'll get to a little bit later. All right, paragraph 4 says that the seller agrees to deliver all built-in appliances, heating, cooling, electrical, gas, plumbing, and septic systems in normal operating condition until title is passed or possession is given, whichever occurs first. It is the purchaser's responsibility to have an inspection, okay? But if you read, it is the seller's responsibility to have the utilities turned on if they have been turned off, and maintain the utilities through the date of closing. So, for instance, if you have a house that we were seeing this a good bit a few years ago, where sellers, unoccupied homes, they would basically shut the water off and winterize them. Well, that's all fine and good, but you can't, as a purchaser, test everything with everything winterized. So the seller is responsible to have that water turned back on, or the power or whatever is off. Gas gets cut off a lot as well. It is their responsibility to have it turned on in order for your purchaser to be able to check. So if you are selling an unoccupied home, not necessarily a new home, the builders are really good about having everything turned on. But if you're selling an unoccupied home, just make sure that you ask the listing agent, are all utilities turned on? If there's gas to the home, if there is a gas fireplace and it's just one of the small cylinder gas cylinders outside, if it is empty, it is the seller's responsibility to fill it up in order for the purchaser to test it. So I've had that happen a good bit. Okay, so make sure that you're asking if it's unoccupied, if all utilities are on. Also, the end of that paragraph says seller to leave garage, house, yard, and outbuildings reasonably clean and free of debris. Do you see anywhere on there where they're going to bring a professional carpet cleaner in and clean the carpets for your purchaser? No. Do you see where they're going to come in and scrub all the toilets and tubs? No. So if that is something that is important to your purchaser, you might want to mention to them that they do not have to professionally clean the home before moving out. It just has to be reasonably clean and free of debris. And I will tell you, reasonably clean is a whole lot of difference right there. If you have somebody that's a really big clean freak and then you have a house that's really messy, what this person might feel is reasonably clean is not what this person feels, okay? So it just has to be clean and free of debris. So that does not mean that there's not going to be bugs on the floor. That does not mean that the toilets are going to be sparkling. It could be pretty dirty. Now, most people will clean as they move out. That does not mean everybody will. Okay? So you cannot just assume. Lead-based paint. Lead-based paint is for pre-1978 construction. If you have a home that is pre-1978, there is also a lead-based paint disclosure that you would have to have and have filled out by the seller and the purchaser. So if it is pre-1978, you would simply put 10, 5, and 5 in these blanks right here. 10, 5, and 5. Okay? If it's post 1978, then you just put NA, NA, NA. That's okay. My fingers. Okay. So 10, 5, and 5 if it's pre-1978. NA, NA, NA if it's post-1978. Now, these two initials down here, super important. It's my biggest pet peeve. It is either the top one or the bottom one. It is not both. So the top one is removing the contingency for lead-based paint. So if it is post-1978 construction, you would just select today's date that you write the offer, and they would initial the top one. If it's pre-1978, they would initial the bottom one. Dotloop does have a glitch, and you will have to go in here and manually select no one to sign right here. And then you will have to select your buyer to sign right here. Okay? So if it is post 1978, they initial the top one. Pre 1978, they would initial the bottom one. Does everybody understand? If they initial both of them and it's pre 1978, you have just given up their opportunity to test for lead-based paint. And you don't want to be responsible for that. Okay? Had a client one time that initialed both of them, and her daughter had a autoimmune disorder. And when we got the lead-based paint disclosure from the seller, it said that the seller was aware that there was possible lead-based paint in the home that was used because it was an older construction. And the purchaser decided that they didn't want to move forward with the purchase simply because it was too risky for her daughter. Well, since she had signed removing the contingency, guess what? She was in breach of contract and they ended up losing their earnest money. You do not want to be responsible for making a mistake and someone losing earnest money because of one thing that you forgot to do. Trust me, sucks. Been there. So make sure, it's super important, you make a note of it. They either initial the top one or they initial the bottom one. They do not initial both of those. All right, moving on. Alabama wood infestation report. You either need a wood infestation report prior to closing. If it's a VA, FHA, conventional is usually not required. However, they can transfer the contract, the termite contract that is currently on the property, and it will suffice if it's acceptable to the lender. So FHA now, if there is a termite bond currently on the property, instead of getting a whole new letter, the purchaser, check with the lender, the purchaser can get a transfer letter from the company and not have to pay that extra inspection. They can just transfer the bond from the seller's name to their name, and it will suffice. Conventional, it's not required at all. And so you just need to be made aware that you don't have to do a termite inspection, but you definitely want to check and see if there's a bond. If there's not a bond, you really want to highly suggest your purchaser doing an inspection. It's just the way it is. In Alabama, you're either going to have termites or you have had termites. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Additional property inspection, purchaser does require property inspection. If they would like to waive that and put does not, then you would need a separate addendum stating that you have advised them to have a property inspection and they have declined, and you need them to sign it. I would never in the state of Alabama waive a property inspection. However, in this market, a lot of buyers are losing so many properties and they're just wanting a house that badly that they are waiving the property inspection in some cases. Just be aware. I would not suggest doing it. However, sometimes you do what the buyer insists on doing. If they do not want a property inspection, just simply draw up an addendum to the contract that says that you have advised them to have a property inspection and they have declined. All right, final inspection. A final inspection is an inspection before closing to make sure either all the repairs were done or just to put their eyes on it one more time, make sure that there's no toilet leaks. I like to go as close to closing as possible. Actually, I usually like to go the day of closing. If you want to check repairs, go maybe a few days before closing and check repairs were done, but then maybe go back right before closing just to double check. I had a buyer one time that the buyer's agent, my buyer's agent at the time, went over there and just opened the door, stuck her head in the door, make sure everything was fine, went to closing, and when the buyer came back from closing on their new house that they had just bought, they walk in and the entire kitchen was flooded because the ice maker line had leaked and busted. And the buyer's agent never walked into the kitchen to see that there was water everywhere. So since we were after closing, at that point, she, first day living in the house, had to file an insurance claim on her insurance, which made her insurance go up. But she was also not happy about the fact that she had to pay a deductible day one for a water leak. So guess who ended up paying the deductible? Yep, you're right, me. So just double check. I always go in, I always run sinks, I always flush toilets. I always check to make sure there's no standing water somewhere. I just like to make sure that it's still there, okay? We're gonna skip all the way down to 9. This is the second paragraph that you should know very, very well. 9 is systems equipment. So everything in here, basically, if it is attached, it must stay. And this is not a paragraph just to talk about your, to your purchaser. This is a paragraph that your sellers should be very well aware of as well. They need to know what all stays. Now, if they have a security system and they do not own the security panel, then you need to put in the MLS that the security panel is not owned by the seller and will be returned, and that the seller will patch the holes where it came up. We don't see that too much, but we do see it come up. If they have cameras on the outside of the house, the seller, they either are going to have to leave the cameras, or you're going to have to put in the MLS that the cameras do not convey. If they are not wanting to leave them, you need to make sure that you put in there that they do not convey, because anything that is attached that is not personal property must remain. Okay, that goes for surround sound systems. That goes for your mother's chandelier that you hung in your dining room. Take it down and replace it before you put it on the market. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Also, something about pool. If you have an in-ground pool, its equipment must remain. So that's not necessarily like saying that the skimmer or whatever has to remain, but that's saying that like the pool pump and everything, you can't just like take it. It has to stay with the system. The only reason I bring that up is I had that issue. Trust account. So this is talking about the trust account that the earnest money goes into whenever we have a purchaser write earnest money to the office. It is held in a trust account. We are not allowed to just, I had a buyer tell me, well, since y'all hold the earnest money, you can just release it. Why do we have to have the other party? This is saying that we cannot release it, okay, until all parties are on the same page. So we must have all parties in agreement to release earnest money. This is talking about alternate dispute resolutions. I really hope you don't have to go that route. If you ever get in a situation where there is a dispute and one or the other party wants out, I encourage you to get Lisa involved as soon as possible. And then you'll probably want to seek out some attorney advice as well on what to do for a sale fail. Entire agreement, just know that this entire agreement is legal binding. It is a legal binding document. If they sign this and the seller agrees, they are legal bound to buy this house. Like they are legally bound under this contract to move forward. So if they have buyer's remorse, which is real, by the way, they have buyer's remorse and wake up tomorrow and decide they don't want it, they are legally under contract and they could lose their earnest money, and not just lose their earnest money, they could end up getting sued. So just so you know. All right, additional provisions. These are things that you can put into the contract, but you do not have to have in there, okay? Number 1, home must appraise for purchase price or greater. We are seeing some people waive that. It's up to your buyer's comfort level. If they waive the appraisal contingency and the house, say the house is $250 and say the appraisal comes in at $245, they would be responsible for bringing an extra $5,000 to closing in order to close this house. So, like I said, FHA, you're not gonna be able to waive that. It's gonna have to be a praise for the purchase price, but on conventional you can, and on VA you can. This is a 1-year home warranty. Seller provide a 1-year choice home warranty not to exceed $580. Sometimes the purchaser really wants a home warranty. I have seen purchasers lose out on a offer, or lose out on a multiple offer situation because of this $580. So you need to prep them ahead of time. Are you sure that you want to ask for this? This is something that you can purchase outside, that you don't have to ask the seller to pay for. The buyer can actually buy their own home warranty should they choose to do so. Okay, but just know that anything that you put in here, you're running more risk of being able to not get an approved contract. Okay. Refrigerator to remain at no additional value. I know some people are wanting to put refrigerators, washers, and dryers on personal property conveyance addendum. I think you're fine to put refrigerator, washer, and dryer to remain at no additional value on your contract. At least refrigerator for sure. We don't see as many washer and dryers, but I think you're okay to put that on the contract. I've not seen one. Lenders a couple years ago kind of got really funny about it. Now they're not being as funny. Another one that you can put on there is closing to be held with capital title at the law office of Radowski, McCurry, Miller, and Maynard. The rule of thumb is whoever is paying for the most closing cost. So if the purchaser is paying their own closing cost, then they usually are the ones that are able to choose which attorney they would like to close with. This is our in-house attorney. You do not have to close there. There is nothing that says you must close there. I just put it on here as an option for you. If you choose to close there, it's a great experience. But if you choose to close there, you can always put that in the contract, or you can leave it out. So I have been simply, personally, me writing offers, I've been leaving it out because at this point, I don't want to add any additional reason why my buyer might not get this offer accepted. Okay. And then here's what you do on earnest money. If they do not have a check right then, or they do not feel comfortable writing a check, then you put purchaser to deliver earnest money to selling office within 48 hours of accepted contract. Okay. If you know they're going to wire the funds, then you would say purchaser to wire earnest money funds to selling office within 48 hours of accepted contract. The reason we don't do 24 is that what if it's accepted on Saturday and Sunday, the office isn't open or you're doing something, right? I mean, I always just put 48. So if it is a purchaser that is out of state, California, wherever, if it's an investor, sometimes they ask for 5 to 7 days. If it's going to be that long, I would probably go ahead and ask for a wire transfer for the earnest money, just to make sure that we can have it within that 48-hour time frame. Okay. In the summertime, you can put in there that the lawn to be maintained through the closing, especially if it's an unoccupied home, you can put that in there. At the bottom is where everybody signs. And then the last page is where you fill out your information. So you fill out your MLS ID, your license number, our MLS ID, and then our license number. Okay. And then you just hit save. Does anybody have any questions about the contract itself? Anything we can answer as far as additional provisions, anything?
Will we get a copy of this?
Can you get a copy of it?
Mhm.
It's on .loop, so, I mean, I guess I could share it with you.
I don't have access to dot loop yet. I don't know when exactly we do get access to dot loop. So I think that will be helpful too if I could get it.
That is a question for Sarah or Jill. Usually, once you've gone through the orientation with, the MCA is when
Mhm.
you get all your passwords and stuff. So, that's usually when you get it. If anybody wants a copy of this, I can just download it, and it can be a PDF, and then Sarah can email it out, to you guys that want a copy. Hold on just a second. Let me-
Would you like for us to put our email in the chat?
Yes, that would be perfect. And then that way I can just get her to, email it out to you guys.
Hi, it's Jamisa. I do have a question about the additional provision.
Yeah,
Should we put in about the seller to pay buyer agency commission in there?
no. No, because, so the contract is just between the purchaser and the seller. It has nothing to do with the actual real estate agent itself, okay? So if it is in the MLS, whatever is in the MLS is what the seller's willing to pay the buyer's agent. And then you should also put in there that, if it is a for sale by owner, there is an agreement called a brokerage fee agreement. Okay, it's called brokerage fee agreement. And that is that's what you would fill out with a for sale by owner to be able to get, that payment. Okay, but never put it in the contract because that has nothing to do with the actual commission itself, because that is just a contract between the buyer and the seller. Did that answer your question about FSBO, Nina? Okay.
Yes.
I think so, yeah. Well, no, my question about FSBOs was farther up, like, if it's a for sale by owner, straight up for sale by owner, not being represented, what do you put in that representation?
So you would have them sign a brokerage fee agreement as well.
Okay.
And you would be assisting them. So Keller Williams would still be on both sides, but you would be assisting them as a transaction broker.
So I did that wrong this weekend.
What did you put?
I put for sale by owner and I didn't click anything
That's okay.
below it.
So
But I did recad them and I did I did the other form, whatever it's called, dual agency, or I'm losing my words right now.
Did you do a limited consensual dual agent or did you
Yes,
do?
limited consensual dual agency.
Okay. All right. So what you need to do is, that's fine for them to do that, but go ahead and get a brokerage, it's called brokerage fee agreement.
I did that. They're not paying, the buyers are. But I did do that and
Okay.
stipulated in there that the buyers were paying.
Perfect. So then you're good. You're covered.
Okay.
Yeah, you're covered.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good. Any other questions? We good? Wednesday is when we will have, the contracts 2. Is there anything that you guys would like to see us go over on contracts 2 that you might have come up as issues or things that you just need help filling out?
I don't know about the contract itself per se, but maybe could we discuss like how we recommend different lenders to buyers, or just different information that buyers may not know already that would be helpful for us to tell them?
Yeah, we can go over stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go over stuff like that. That's not a problem. So everybody should always have like 3 lenders, 3 home inspectors. You wanna definitely recommend as many people as possible. So you're not ever stuck in that, well, she told me to use them, or he told me to use them. Then it could get into a sketchy situation. So, all right, anybody else have anything additional?
What do you normally cover in the contracts 2 class?
So we normally cover different things as far as like requests for repairs. We can go over
I think we lost you.
about occupancy agreements, retention of possessions. There's lots of different things you can do in contracts 2. So we really just leave it up to you guys of what you're having issues with at the moment, and then we kind of target that, because there's a lot of different forms that you could actually go over. We good?
I just had a buyer who had just purchased a new built home. And their contract looked a lot, not a lot, it looked different than ours. If I'll just break it down to, are there a standard ones for them compared to us, or is it each builder have their own forms?
Yep. Pretty much each builder around here is gonna have their own form. And it's just, so what I do, if you know that your buyer's gonna want a new build and they're looking at, say, D.R. Horton very heavily, you can, as the real estate agent, request a copy to look at that contract beforehand, before y'all get to the signing. And I would suggest looking it over and going through it before you actually sit down, because that way, if you have questions about it, you can either hit one of us up, or you can ask Lisa about it. You can ask any of the ALC members about it. That way, if your buyer has a question at the table when you're filling it out, instead of saying, well, I don't know, you can say, you know, I asked about that already, and this is the answer that I got. But every builder is different. They're gonna basically have their own contract. And I know that stinks, guys. Trust me. There's a lot of stuff in builder contracts, and we can talk about some of that too on Wednesday, on things to look out for in builder contracts that could cost your buyer more money versus our standard HAR contract that we go over. So we can write down a list of things that you can ask the on-site agent if their contracts include or not. So Wednesday at 10 a.m. I think. Let me double check. Yeah, Wednesday at 10 a.m. is our Contracts 2 class. And it's the same link that was sent out today. And we'll be going over stuff in the same loop that we used today. And then everybody that put in their email address, I'll get Sarah to email out the, oh gosh, I don't know why we lost audio. I'll get Sarah to email out that copy of that contract for you guys, and that way you can have that. Okay? We all good? Good deal. More chats? Everybody's chatting me? Uh-oh, I need to get yours too. Jose, you can find this. I think Sarah can actually post the link on Facebook of the recording. If not, if you will just email the front desk and tell Sarah that you would like the recording from the contracts class, then you can certainly get that, and she can email it right out to you. So that will be a
very
problem.
much.
Yep, no problem at all. All right, well, you guys have a great day, and if y'all need anything from me, let me know, and I will see you guys Wednesday at 10.
One quick question.
Yeah.
What about the cash contract? You said it's a little different, but not much. It's a little different. Are you gonna go over that one too on Wednesday?
So which one?
The cash contract?
The cash sales contract? Yeah, if you just go in .loop and you look for cash sales contract, it's basically the same thing that we just went over. Just a few less blocks to fill out, but it has basically all the same information. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can fill out the finance one, you can fill out the cash one, because it's basically the same thing.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. See you on Wednesday.
All right. See y'all later. Thank you.